Hey everybody, it's good to see you! I feel dirty every time I say that. So, welcome to a weekly update stream. Mark right now is super deep in resolving some finer points of the design. We are chaining him to his design desk. It's pretty fun.
So we get to do CU update action.
Yep. And so you get Andrew and Michelle on the CU update.
Yay.
I'm Michelle. This is Andrew. And yeah. And this is your weekly update. So first off, just a couple programming scheduling announcements. We do not have a big significant test planned for this weekend. We are going to try and announce like the big ones farther in advance. We're not doing that Friday, so not being like Friday, come in on Saturday, giving people, because it was a very successful test last weekend with a whole lot of people who hadn't played in a while coming in and murdering each other in a scenario. So definitely a good thing to give more notice. So we will look for, in the very near future, an announcement of another "Hey everybody" kind of test.
Sweet.
I'm not going to announce the announcement. I'm just going to announce the announcing of the announcement.
More details
yes.
to come.
In your email. And second, my annual vacation basically every year is to go to Dragon Con. It's a fun time. The last couple of years I've brought Mark with me and we have had a CU panel. We're doing the same thing. It will be Friday evening, so approximately 7 days and 4 hours from right now. You guys can harass Mark and I in person.
It sounds like you have a countdown, like excitement to go.
This is like my annual party vacation, so you can generally find me, getting sexually harassed in the Pulse Lounge when I am not on the CU panel. This is actually part of my cosplay.
Oh, are you serious?
I am dead serious. This is,
I just thought you were being comical.
No, well, yes, but also it's part of my cosplay. I've got a friend who's very into airplanes. She actually, there's like this big long piece in the New York Times about the F-35. She wrote it. She's, aviation journalist. And also, her secret life is like super hardcore cosplayer.
So bring them together.
Yeah, so she put together a Top Gun group this year. And so it's a
Are you bringing the guiding lights to guide everyone?
Yeah. So
through?
my role in the Top Gun group is I am literally the highway to the danger zone. I am dressing as a Kenny Loggins song. So any of you who are down there, I should be pretty easy to find, but
yeah,
dangerous. Yes, come see us at Dragon Con. All right, so what we actually did here this week. So I feel like I'm standing in front of a fire hose of completed tasks almost. Like there's so much stuff. Number one, Linuxification Part 1. Colin finished converting all the NPC server stuff to .NET Core. That's the version of .NET that A, runs significantly faster than old style .NET framework, and B, runs on Linux. And so that's just part of that big process. Also, as part of doing that, that meant converting like all the foundational stuff leading up to that. So, whole stack of utilities and everything. It's up and working. So we'll probably, hopefully, Monday or Tuesday, we'll flip the switch and just get Hatchery running on that. then, meanwhile, while Colin's been churning through the C# stuff, Wiley and to a lesser extent, George and I have been, bulldozering our way through the C++ stuff, and mostly I just am wrangling config shit, and they're doing the hands-on bleeding, fingery touchings. Yeah.
That sounds dirty.
Are we still talking about programming?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's a lot of Linux action. More and more Linux action.
Yep. So Wiley's been doing all the core utilities. George has been doing specifically our parallel and threading library while doing lots and lots of meetings and wrangling. He even got involved in some art outsourcing today. That was George's all over the place, taking care of all the things. And I've been taking care of like top level configuration type stuff and lots of rebuild. So number 4,
Art. Procedural materials. This week we focused on some procedural materials for props such as boxes and barrels. It's an ongoing goal of this work to provide a consistent material library for us sexy artists to use. That ideally requires less hand painting for us than we have to do, just so we can kind of plug it in and basically create ourselves a massive library. Obviously this cuts down on time to create new art assets while making it easier later not only to tweak the textures but also create variations.
Yeah, have we done any live streams of people like generating procedural textures and all?
Generating the textures?
Yeah, because that'd be a very cool thing
no.
for people to watch. We should look into that. I'm looking at you. Yeah. Gonna have your big debut.
I could almost see the sweat drop.
The artists are shy. So, number 5, tech and audio. So, kind of high-level type thing. We've been doing a lot of stuff about pulling together scenarios. So, Spidey added new audio hooks for the startups of the scenarios, victory, defeat, all sorts of musical flair and things like that, and just making all of those that stuff be audio triggerable. And kind of where we are going. Scenarios are ultimately like at the absolute high level. They are things like, we run them as self-contained instances, but at the high level, like this is a thing that grows to encompass like the king has ordered the realm to take that capital city, and it's a massive public quest for everyone. Or even down at the low level of just kind of a scenario of one for you as a to do kind of a mini bounty quest type thing. Mm-hmm. So scenarios are everywhere. It's gonna be cool. It is cool. We are running scenarios. So number 6, tech and abilities. Anthony's been cleaning up a whole bunch of stuff and creating like unit tests and making sure everything passes our unit tests, and all of those have like resolved lots of bugs and edge cases and all kinds of abilities. That's a if we were putting out patch notes at this stage of development, this would be like probably like 50 items in the patch notes about like, oh yes, when you put these two things together, this stupid thing doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. So patch notes are cool.
Patch notes are a good thing.
Number 7.
All right. Concepting NPCs. Turns out us concept artists are a bit of speed devils. This week we've completed over 8 pages, primarily focused on what we're calling the magic using Draugr. Forgive me if I say it wrong, I always do, but I spell it right. Now the hard part is figuring out which ones we might like to see in CU and narrow down. But it's nice to have all the extras in case Ben comes up with something cool. We can almost pull a lot of times.
You know what? I want more undead Vikings in the depths. More undead depths Vikings.
I have no problem making undead Vikings.
Yep, that's what Draugr are.
Well, I know what Draugr are. I mean the pronunciation.
Draugr.
Draugr.
So much Skyrim.
Tech tools.
Tech and tools. So Rob worked on spatial state visualization tools, and there was also some kind of some support on that from Matt with the server pushing debug shapes to the client, I believe. And this lets us like just see exactly, okay, where is this ability actually affecting, like where is this scripted to, and so that that lets it, and does that actually align with where the people who actually got hit. And it's all it's like 3D combat log would be, like if combat log were 3D shapes.
Ooh.
It helps us a lot, so it's a cool thing.
Let's see, music, low intensity track. DB got the key changes in for the music there. This helps add more variation to the same music track, making it less repetitive on those long nights of gaming. Pathfinding.
Do you know have you ever heard the phrase truck driver key change?
No.
So it's like, when someone's writing a silly pop song and they just kind of run out of ideas, they're just like, well, just shift up one key and play the chorus again. That's like, it's a crutch in writing music. You've heard it so many times, especially like in pop country. Because I know you're all pop country.
Oh, yeah, sure. Cause classic rock or 80s music, whatever.
And meanwhile, Mike has been working on sort of like, well, he has a path, but what does he actually do? Like connecting that into taking footsteps across the ground, and also been doing a bunch of work about like dynamic things of, two guys have the same path and they collide, and making them not get stuck on each other but just sort of walk side by side.
You've been giving them brain cells.
Yes. They're super smart. They're like, they are at least as smart as like those little toys that, bonk, 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 bonk. Like smarter than a Roomba.
Well, see, yes, we're above the Roomba. That's
we've
not
gotten
bad.
to the Roomba level.
Let's see. Animations. Scott and Sandra both completed a lot of additional animation block out for possible use on various NPCs. These movement sets are different than our basic player character movements to further differentiate the NPCs. Additionally, Scott worked on movement and attack animations for one-handed and unarmed attacks. We need all the attacks.
All the attack.
The attack. We need them all.
So, number 12, tech and tools. So, I think I've mentioned several times, our world editor kind of sucks. It really does.
No, you don't say.
And, as there has been a great increase in the amount of terrain that people are producing, and so a great increase in the desire to improve the world editor. And both Matt and Rob have been doing a lot of good work on that. And that is...
It's going to make some people so happy.
That's like, because like I sit with my desk basically, facing towards Ben, and I just see like over the top of my monitor Ben using the editor, and it hurts me to watch him do it, because I'm just like, oh man. So we are spending now that he's doing that a lot, we are, actually looking over his shoulder and fixing the things that suck. So
fixing is good. Let's see. Traps and Dragons. Joe assisted Christina this week by providing some simple assets and animation to test the functionality of traps. I'm good at English. He worked with Mike D as well to test whether we could add animations to that really old and very ugly dragon model we've had flying overhead.
Most people haven't seen that, actually. That's only turned on in
They haven't seen
Hatchery.
The Derp Dragon?
No, the Derp Dragon is like a thing I threw in like an hour, like over Christmas break several years ago, but it's turned off for everything but Hatchery.
Yeah, well, the fun thing about this is verifying this kind of functionality work will allow us to create various ambient animated models. So it helps everything in the long term if we can get this one big thing, actually moving nice and feeling
another
good.
thing on that is we've been, like improving sky animations in general, like the ability to put animated stuff into the sky, and something like two titans punching each other.
Well, yeah, or World Serpent, just chilling, whatever. I know he's usually in the ocean, but, maybe some days he wants to go up.
It's like, oh man, that, like that is the derpiest dragon in the world. It's just like a completely rigid model that just sits there like this, and it moves, and it goes along rails in a path.
It's beautifully sculpted, though. The original
kite.
sculpture is
Yeah,
awesome.
it's a dragon kite, except
we made the sculpture like we couldn't put bones in it due to a technicality or something like that and get all those animations in there.
I think it was mostly due to not wanting to spend the time on something that was me screwing around. And it's green because I put like some just like grass texture on it.
Is that why that
Yeah,
is?
it's not a
Jesus.
dragon scale texture at all. I was just like, find a texture that's green. Done.
Haven't looked at beyond like the Zeus brush sculpt, but I assumed it was just
No,
a
this
green
was-
plastic material, kind of as a joke. You mean you put the grass on it?
It's something that's not a dragon texture at all. It's just I
Jesus.
grabbed the first texture I saw that was green.
You could have
and
at least
splatted
picked
it
the
on
shingles. Then look like it had scales.
Like the whole dragon was like it really was. It was like, I think it was the Friday before we took a Christmas break, and I was like, I don't really want to start anything new that's real, and I had like, but it was only like 2:00 in the afternoon, so I was like, well, I'm going to do something fun. And I just like put in this stupid dragon. Like in the code, it's even spelled Dagron.
Oh my
Because, strong bad. So.
god. Yay! Those are our top 10s. Technically a top 13.
I feel lucky. You feeling lucky?
I'm always lucky.
All right, so we will do questions, and you have tech and art. Any heavy, deep design questions, save them for next time you get Mark or Ben or someone like that, and bring it on.
All the questions. I even take random questions.
All right, folks, give us your questions. As Andrew said, we are focusing on programmer and artist questions today. Bobo Dayak asks, did you start coding what's related to the map, and do you foresee any problems related to it? Positions of players related to an island that itself changes location, player placed objects, and so on.
No and no. That's something that's always been kind of built into the design. So there's several facets to that. So as you guys know, watching streams long ago, the idea is that the world has been broken by a cataclysmic magical event, and it has been shattered into, the world map has been shattered into many islands, and they can be pulled closer back together by channeling veil energy and constructing and defending stabilizers. So there's lots of kind of separate zones that are in the world, but those can move relative to each other. So the world, what that means is that the world map is just sort of like the maps of each of those zones positioned relative to each other. And so players just have, like, I'm in this zone at this position, and therefore that, so the world map is just kind of a bunch of zone maps overlaid next to each other with that sort of, slide. So that's fairly easy stuff. In terms of the one thing that we really don't have the ability to do is make player-created structures that stretch from one island to another that connect on both, and that's
That's a challenge.
yeah, because the islands are gonna move. So so it's not so much a problem with the map as just physically in the game world. I think that's the map that we're talking about. There's a whole lot of things about map that that world gets used a lot for a lot of different things.
It's a wide category.
Because we also call the zone file that lays out the terrain a map. Oh yeah, Ben's working on the map. No, Ben's actually working on the ground, but yeah.
Laudoween asks, how close to the number of engineers that you want are you for hiring?
I think we are in a really good place in terms of the number of game developers. We could definitely use more in the area of tools. We could use the more in the area of DevOps and possibly web backend as well. We just got another guy signed his paperwork. Obviously we don't talk about people, but things continue.
Yeah, I hear the tools is a deep desire over an art.
Yes.
We're tools
Yes.
programmer. Ooh.
Yeah. So Rob and Matt have both been helping on tools, but we could use a second dedicated tools programmer because there's just more tools than Bolt can really wrangle himself. So that's where we are.
Odilvik has the same question for each of you. What percent of the current code is launch ready versus needing another pass? Same question for Michelle, but what percent of art is launch ready?
Oh. Launch ready.
So
How we define launch? I know we have a ton of art, and we are definitely ahead versus behind. But tweaks are always made. That would also depend on your end, what happens in the game and what tweaks we make there.
So I would say that in terms of the code that has been written right now, let's say over 90% of it is not going to get touched. Now there's more code that needs to be written, especially in and around the areas of kind of closing that loop on the economy, making crafting is undoubtedly going to get another pass as part of that. A bunch of things like that. But the code that has been written I'm pretty happy with a lot of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy over an art very much. We're just knocking out a ton of fun stuff.
Now, it's not to say there aren't bugs, transparency and blending is a current big pain point, and not super happy with how some of the other rendering works.
Yeah, there's some stuff in the rendering how
optimization always happens to every system. And that's just profile it, look at what's slow, change that, profile it, look at what's slow, change that. But that's smacking down hotspots, not we must throw out this entire thing and rewrite it from scratch. We're in a good place.
Happy
So how about
place.
you?
Oh, I said, to say launch ready, there is a good amount of stuff. There's just a lot of things that will be adjusted. I know that we're ahead of the curve. Never am I in a place where I feel like, oh, we're missing all the things or we need designs here and there. No, I think we're definitely moving ahead so we can give stronger stuff.
Okay, so next question.
Real Life Gabo asks, any plans for Vulkan support after launch?
There are not specific concrete plans. So, that is something that's near and dear to my heart, but I don't think it makes the game, I don't think it gets the game launched. And we will see how things go with various business opportunities after that.
Drooged asks, when you make art for weapons and armor, are you still breaking it into discrete parts so that in the future, parts can be mixed and matched to make unique-ish items?
Yes, absolutely. That we have all these little design stuff. Everything is at minimum broken up into almost 2 or 3 pieces on average or more. So example, the swords, we've broken them up even in design wise to, you got your blade, and then you got your pommel, and you got the little hand guard, so that way we have the opportunity to do that mix and match system. But yeah, it's always kept in the back of our heads and design, carrying throughout everything right now.
Tanza Tanta asks, Will the realm-specific landscape changes find their way back into the game soonish?
I really hope so. But, well, I hope so eventually. Right now, we, like I said, that's one of those things that might take deeper work, and, it'll happen someday, but I can't put a timeline on it. It's mostly about just optimizing code and making sure that when that happens, it happens with no hitches, no interruptions, no disruption to gameplay. Because the last thing you want is a big hitch at a climactic moment in a siege.
Dark Society Network asks, do you think you can get building destruction to a flawless state, or will wonky physics always be part of the intended chaos?
So flawless is a funny word. I'm going to say there's always going to be some interesting things that will go on, and some of that is just chaos is fun. But yeah, I'd like to make it a little more organic. Things actually either come to rest or break apart. Like none of this should either. But that's there's a continuum.
You don't like it when they dance?
Yeah, the full-on dancing, we're gonna. I think we can achieve that. We can get rid of that, no problem. It's a question of where we prioritize it, but we're gonna. But I like a degree of chaos. So, and we're not going as far as simulating actual timbers and things like that. So,
the unpredictability.
Right.
Druge has a question for Michelle. The work that you do sets the mood for CU. Can you tell us about a piece that you did which you felt had a huge impact on the mood of the game, or for an area which it belongs to?
Let me think here. Jesus. I want to The game has been building as a whole. I'm trying to think back to Kickstarter. There's a couple probably pieces there that we ended up using as seeds and then grow out. It's hard to pick one because it really is starting from small little seeds where you're like, ooh, I really like where this is going, or it has something here, and then you end up building out and branching out, and from those branches you end up getting stronger and newer stuff. Also, I have a terrible short-term memory other than I keep wanting to do better and better stuff and fun stuff for the game.
I think.
Is there one stands out to you? Because I'm trying to think. I think it may. Gotcha. It was terrible at the time. It was probably the TDD, but then I ended up, or the Vikings, where we started putting all the different materials on them and whatnot. But
I feel like the Vikings
my skill
have evolved.
Has gone up significantly.
I feel like the Vikings have
then.
evolved the most. In terms of what they look like.
Yeah, and then the. There's because a lot of stuff was grown out of those. I would even say some maybe the Strim and whatnot, and refined out from there. And the gargoyles, which we do need to readdress one day.
Tanzatanta asks, is there sort of a schedule as to when we will be done testing scenarios and be able to move on to testing island mechanics?
So, I'm not going to announce a schedule, but I did mention the island scenarios just sort of grow. Scenarios grow until, there are, at the top end, just one uber scenario with some sub-scenarios running under it. And that's, in terms of the biggest thing to really nail the island mechanics is getting the Dragon's Web working. And that actually, some of the stuff we mentioned today about setting up traps, setting up items that have scriptable responses, that's all part of that. So I can't put an exact timeline on it, but you should expect that to be really kind of a continuum rather than a, and here's the wall and now everything is completely different.
Bold Venture asks, how does changing the code affect the art?
How does code affect the art? Usually it's when we find out if there's a limitation or there's actually something more freedom we can do. So a lot of times we might come up with a really interesting design, something we love, but there turns out there's a code lets us know there's like a limitation. So then we still invoke the design but work within the limitation given.
Yeah, I mean, it's, where on the art, like there's, in terms of world art, where so much of the world is just procedural, like there's stuff that has a big change, and one code change in procedural terrain will have like huge sweeping changes to a whole lot of art.
And another thing we try and focus on, is always player communication, but it's also flexibility. Like even asking about the crafting stuff, like when we design like weapons and armor stuff, we're still thinking about in part systems for that future, or we think in flexibility what will work with everything in code or assist over in that end.
Yeah, there's a just one example of something that'll probably happen super quick. Like art. This was a case of art driving code. Tyler was like, "Hey, when we, in some of our icy areas, can we spawn in, like we want all of the like horizontal icicles to be pointing the same way." So we made like the procedural terrain. Like have a thing to align stuff to the prevailing wind direction on the area. So, that's a place where code changed art, or art changed code. We're in the same room, we yell at each other.
Or whine.
Yeah.
Or you're like, why can't we have the thing? Where's the thing?
Where's the thing?
Type the thing and make the thing we need.
The Lotus Wraith asks, how many different biomes do y'all have planned for the world within the depths and on the surface?
There's a list. It's in my notebook over there, but there's many biomes. Gosh.
Is
it okay to say like my guesstimate of the number on there?
Yes.
You think? It's like between 12 and 15, I think. Trying to remember visually in my notebook. But Ben came up with some really fun ideas for the biomes that we're working on.
Ben has lots of fun ideas.
He does have lots of fun ideas. And then more ideas on top sometimes.
You're saying some of Ben's ideas aren't fun?
No, I'm saying he has so many. Either it's hard to pick, or it's like, no, we gotta maybe just narrow it down every little bit. For the moment.
Odilvik asks, if you could trade positions and skill sets with someone else for a day in the office, who would you trade with? I.e., where do you see the grass being greener and lots of fun?
I don't know, I kind of want to be a tools programmer. I'd be the ultimate unicorn. I'd be so desired.
And then you discover, wait, my task list is nothing but whining artists. All those people of, why can't we? All coming to you. Every single one of them.
I would have to negotiate an office with a door.
Let's see, for me. In terms of what might actually be fun, it may seem lame to pick another engineer, but I might enjoy trading places with Anthony. Anthony's the guy who is like strapped hand in hand with Ben. Of like, Ben has a cool idea for a skill or an ability, and he connects that actually in the engine to set that all up, and just churn through the list of cool abilities and make each individual part go, and it seems fun.
When you say strapped hand in hand, do you mean
there's duct tape.
Do you mean like a seatbelt in a car, or like tandem skydiving?
Ooh. Do they get parachutes, or do they just
normally
go to the danger zone?
That's bad.
MezPT asks, is the lore from the website translating into the game to your two's satisfaction?
I'm more translating the game. I know art we use it heavily. We try and sneak stuff in either from the lore or like points in history. So I'm about to say, like, I don't know, I like the lore.
Like,
very useful to us. Don't take it away.
yeah, from a tech point of view, it's there are a few like super high concept things that influence stuff. Like, okay, how did we set up our sky dome to accommodate the lore of the dragons and things like that? But yeah, a lot of that's more the mechanics of it. Things like we don't care why the islands move. We just know we want to make the islands move.
Yeah. I mean, I could draw the islands moving for you, but I think that's more of your problem versus my problem.
Might be Colin's problem.
Oh, is it Colin?
Interestingly, people on Twitch and YouTube asked basically the same question. So both Saya OUO and Brennan on YouTube asked whether the art direction for the present and future of the game, is it evolving? And what direction is it going?
I think it's becoming more refined. We had a general idea and we're able to refine it into a better aesthetic, and more cohesive. In the beginning, we were trying so many ideas and just trying to find something that's just fucking cool. And we're like, this is cool, and we've been slowly like weeding them up to something that's a bit more cohesive. So I feel more refined now when it comes to that.
Daladin asks, will angle of impact affect siege projectile damage, or maybe even cause 0 damage ricochets?
Ooh, that's a cool idea. Right now it doesn't, but that's a cool idea. Yeah, let's look into that a little bit.
That can make
No promises. No promises. But
go ahead.
I encourage you to start a forum thread about that. Like, really.
Awesome. A couple of people are asking whether they missed an announcement about weekend testing.
So there is no big weekend test. It's always possible that like someone might be working on something and they might be like, hey, I could use some people in on short notice, but we do not have a big weekend test this weekend. We had a really great one last weekend, but look in your inbox for something soon. I'm not going to say more than that. Yeah, there's a holiday weekend coming up. So
It's going up so fast.
Nanulok asks a question related to pathing. Will the NPCs be able to swim? Somebody answer that for me.
So I'm not going to say never. I am going to say that's that's definitely not in the immediate short-term requirements for them, though. So yeah, that'd be a nice to have someday kind of thing.
Quick follow-up, Lodoween asks, or will they avoid water to avoid death?
Yes, they will do that. I mean, basically, water is a place
lava.
that they don't have it just doesn't exist. It's an obstacle in the pathing system. So they just kind of are like, yeah, there's nothing to walk on there, so therefore I'm not going to walk there. You could knock them into water. I think they would just drown if you do.
Yeah.
Right now they would.
Because water is lava right now.
Got some design questions. We're just doing programmer type questions and artist type questions, folks.
Yep. Next update, we'll make
I
some.
can try and answer those. I just won't. They'll be not accurate whatsoever.
We should do that. We should just have we should make you answer all the code questions, and I'll answer all the design questions, and Ben will answer all the art questions.
Yeah, I could give that a shot, as long as no one actually
All
believes
answers,
any
yeah.
word I say as truth.
# wrong answers only.
In all caps.
Dizzy Stream asks, when interviewing new coders, do you guys run a standard whiteboard session, or do you have a stylized approach?
Okay, so I used to do the whiteboard thing because the whiteboard thing was done to me, and much like the way abused children become abusive parents, I ran my interviews the way
You put your pain on them.
yeah, And eventually I came to this realization that like the whiteboard interview where you just like hand someone a marker and everyone stares at them while they answer questions, like that doesn't test how good of a programmer you are. That tests
Your anxiety levels.
Yeah, that tests whether or not you have stage fright. That's like, it's more the skill is, can you do a TED talk, not can you write good code. The programming interviews go in a very, very stereotypical way. First thing is just a general screen of who you are and what's your history, and we're a game company, right? That Anna does, and then Mark will do like a 1 hour call for, do you, like, are you a good person? Do you seem like someone we could get along with? Then there's a programming test that we send you to take on your own time, with your own resources, at your own desk, in a quiet room with your headphones on. You can use Stack Overflow or whatever other things. Just, can you show us some good code that you can write under a situation that's actually like writing code? And then next step, pre-screen with me, and then full panel with the engineering team, hopefully on site. So, and then we hire you.
Yay!
It's real simple. And several stages where we get several different stages where things go right or wrong.
Mm.
Dark Society Network asks, how did you decide the amount of empty room between ground and skybox? And could you easily adjust it if future considerations in regards to perspective from tall buildings, performance, etc., make it necessary?
So, how did we do? So, on a tech side, it's kind of a punt because the skybox is not in the same physical reality. It's kind of like, here's a camera in a world, and then that just comes in as a flat image that's a backdrop for the world that you're in. So I think actually, like, the sun and the moon and all, like, they're just like 10 meters away, or like this really small little dome world, but then that just gets projected as a backdrop onto everything, so stuff never collides. So we could change that in terms of so it's, I don't know, could you ask the question again?
Yeah, it's about whether the skybox could be easily adjusted, and does it affect performance to have it really tall?
Okay, so it does not affect performance at all. It's really just absolute number of pixels that get drawn. And could we adjust the heights? Yes. There are some games like, where you do sort of a 3D skybox where, like, you have all your stuff at ground level, and then like the tops of the buildings are all cut off at like 5 meters, and then there's a skybox above that. Mm-hmm. And so the skybox is super carefully aligned with the world, and stuff has to line up like perfectly snap to grid and all that. I've worked in some engines like that. That's not really a constraint with the way we've built this engine, though.
Real Life Gabo asks, when can we expect more races in the game?
When Tyler says we can. No, I would hope, near future. A lot of design work has been done on them and stuff. They just they're waiting for the next stage.
Lotoween has a question for Michelle. How much did the switch to 64-bit improve the color quality, in your opinion?
All I know, like, okay, is that what made it look better?
It didn't really change the colors. It gave us more memory for more triangles and higher res textures.
I'm sure it did good because, like, I don't get to jump in on tests probably as much as I should or want to. But like every time I'm jumping in, it's been better and better. So I'm assuming that was probably part of it.
I mean, 64-bit didn't. Like the big changes to like the color grading and lighting and all that, those happen totally independently. 64-bit basically just opened up more memory and therefore higher res textures.
Mm-hmm. And it has nothing to do with me being red and green colorblind. No, but I mean, like, color in general, I think really has improved.
Tyrannosaur asks, what's the most useful skill you've tried to build for effective concepting? If you had tips for people trying to get into concepting, what would be the most important one?
Be a creative problem solver is one, because usually creative problem solver and also visual communication is your biggest one, because the trick with concept art is it's all about the idea. You don't have to be making a Mona Lisa. It's like once you visually communicate that idea, if the other person can see that and understand it, you're done. Like, you know, not everything needs to be absolutely rendered. So I would say visual communication and creative problem solving, so you can create stronger ideas.
Yeah, the best concept artists aren't turning out like beautiful finished painting. They're turning out like, here's 10 completely different ideas for what this could look like.
Yeah, how can you take one thing and turn it into 20 that represent the idea
take it 20
in 20
different
different
directions.
ways that represent the same thing within 20 different versions.
Yeah, now it's kind of interesting how that's evolved as a specialty in the game industry. You know, I remember early on, like, when it was just like, well, you're a person who paints 2D pictures, so we're going to take the concept art, and then we're just going to make a model that's like the exact shape of the concept art, and we're going to take the concept painting and smack it down as just like one texture on the character like this. And, you know, when textures were lower res and poly budgets were smaller, that, you know, that maybe people could get away with, and that's not at all what you do now.
Yeah, and sometimes it's also a thing that goes not only visual communication on the idea, it's also like rendering it to a point that also assists your 3D modeler, because that's who the next person is that's going to be reading from whatever one gets approved, you know. So you want it for a modeler to look and say, okay, and I generally know what to do here, or the important things really read well.
Do you ever do, like, you know, same thing from a couple of different angles to, like, you know, be kind of a specific guide for how something should be modeled, or do the modelers more like fill in that themselves?
If there's an important element that makes sense that you need to see that turnaround, like something you can't see on the back or how far something juts out in front, yes, or say if John requests it to make his life easier, because I'm all about making John's life easier.
Foxovic asks, can we expect in the future for plots to be able to snap together side by side with or without a gap?
Yes, that is a requirement for capital cities. Although that may be a case where we've kind of pre-snapped the plots and you're able to claim a deed, but we definitely do want and need the ability for things to, you know, to have a line of like little row houses piled on top of each other for cities.
All right, I think I've gotten the gist of Bobo Dak's question here. Correct me if I'm wrong, Bobo, but I think he's asking, he wants to know, Michelle, what sounds the coolest to you? Mind Masters, Devourers, or Elementalists?
Elementalist if I'm painting it. My Masters if it's something I want to play. But Elementalist if I gotta design it.
Yeah, Elementalist just screams particle effects coming up everywhere.
Like, oh, look at all the fun things, you know.
Yeah, just
I have so many brushes for that.
Just open your robe and, you know, buses and leaves and snails and flames all just come shooting out.
Oh yeah, but and then if they're say, I don't know if they're male or female, but if they're female, oh, you make some really pretty stuff, you know. I want to make a pretty thing.
You saying I'm not pretty?
You're very pretty. I can make you pretty.
I want to be pretty.
Dark Society Network, I think that's a design question. But maybe there's a programming element to it. Is it at all a problem, in technically speaking, to have a minimum distance between plots?
to enforce a minimum distance. We do enforce a minimum distance now, just so that, like, way out in the world, someone doesn't come up and smack down a plot like directly on top of yours, and like we try and minimize the spite fence effect. Like where you hate your neighbor, and so you put up a 20-foot high hot pink fence blocking their windows. That's...
And visually, to me, I would assume the tricky part's going to be finding a sweet spot of how much that distance is, so that people can still feel like if they want to build town together or something, or a neighborhood or whatever.
Yeah, so my suspicion on where we will go with towns is, like, there will be, predefined plots on a grid that, you will be able to get somehow. It won't be like, whereas going off in and homesteading in the frontiers, there'll be a much higher minimum distance, but you'll be able to just pick your own plot.
Oh, sorry, I just thought about a Viking homesteading in the frontier with his herd of wolves.
He's got to herd some sheep so he can have horns for his helmet.
Lodoween asks, after launch, do you think you will spend more time hunting other CSE employees? I like how that could be hiring or...
Are we hunting them? Is that how you guys are doing it?
Or will you try to avoid them, and why?
Oh, I think he means in the game.
Oh, you're probably right.
Oh, yeah, we murder the fuck out of each other.
I thought you were thinking, like, hiring, like, you're going to...
Yeah, no, we...
Yeah, in the game.
Yeah, it's just straight up murder fest. Like, we hunt each other down on purpose. There is so much trash talking in the office when we have playtests.
Yeah, me and Cinder, when we had Junket, we tend to, like, run somewhere completely opposite where everyone else is to do our checks of what we're looking at in art, because, like, you'd be, like, dead in a second. We're like, no.
We also occasionally may abuse each other with GM commands.
Yeah.
Tim... There's this one thing of, before NPCs could path at all, they would get all clustered up. And so there was this GM command that would take every character near you and just blast them away in, like, one, just epic knockback, like the Incredible Hulk just punched the ground or something. And so Tim just started using that on the rest of us. And
why am I not surprised?
Because Tim.
Tim.
Bold Venture asks, how repetitive is your daily work?
No, it is never a boring day. What is this word for repetitive?
I
do not know this word.
For an engineer, if you're solving the same problem twice, you're not reusing code the right way.
No, in our, it's never boring. There's always something new, or we're working multiple things at once, or, that kind of thing. I don't know that word, repetitive.
Some days I wish I could just, like, sit there and do the same thing all day, every day, but...
Lunch repetitive. It happens every day.
Yeah?
Yeah, never mind, I have that.
There's only so many places.
No. We have lunch every day.
How many times
and therefore that's repetitive.
How many trips to H Mart have you made for lunch?
I did not go to H Mart. I went to Panera today. Actually, it's probably Jimmy John's I go to the most. Sandwich. I love me a sandwich.
All right, this might be a fun one to end with.
Okay, let's wrap it up.
Society Network asks, if you could combine your superpowers of art and programming to add one really cool thing to the game, what would it be?
Atmospheric lighting. If that's what I think it's called. Where I can choose chunks of areas and say, you and now green fog or green lighting, and then you can, like, shift over to another area and then it's all blue. Whatever that is, that.
We're simpatico here. Let's go do that this weekend.
Atmospheric lighting.
I'm surprised that was that you were thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
Because that would be delicious, especially.
With proper volumetric fog, so that, someone sets off a skill behind a tree and you see, like, the shadow of the tree casting through the fog.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Or, like, imagine a fireball cutting through a misty forest and, like, all the shadows of the trees just, like, going
Or you even seems like the color of the light even hitting the trees as it's like going by.
Yeah, and lighting up the smoke, except shadowed by the trees in the smoke. That'd be a beautiful, beautiful scene.
Mm.
Well, that was quick. Should we take
We're
more
efficient.
or call it?
Let's call that. Let's
All right.
let's call it and go like at volumetric lighting.
Volumetric lighting. Volumetric lighting.
All right,
Volumetric lighting.
we love you all. Watch your emails. Watch your email early next week for a test announcement, and we will see you later.
Bye, bye.
See you later.